Imagine you are standing in this really sleek, glass-walled boardroom.
Oh, setting the scene right away.
Yeah, I want you to really picture this, because you are the protagonist of this scenario today. You're a talented professional, you've put in the late hours, and you just delivered a massive presentation to your entire leadership team.
High stakes.
Very high stakes. And you absolutely crush it. I mean, you finish the final slide, and the room genuinely lights up.
That's the best feeling.
It really is. Afterwards, you get, let's say, 20 pieces of glowing praise. People are shaking your hand, they're admiring the specific data models you built, they're praising your confident delivery.
Right, total validation.
Exactly. But then, and here's where it turns, your manager pulls you aside. And amidst all that overwhelming praise, they give you one microscopic piece of critical feedback.
Just one.
Just one. They mentioned that, you stumbled over the transition on slide 14, and your tone was maybe slightly defensive during the Q&A. And that is it.
But we both know what happens next.
Oh, yeah. Your brain instantly deletes the 20 compliments. I mean, they just cease to exist. By the time you reach your car in the parking lot, you are completely obsessing over that single critique.
It's a classic downward spiral.
Right. And it makes you wonder, why are we wired to aggressively filter out all that overwhelming success and just, hyperfixate on a single point of failure?
Well, it's actually a survival mechanism. It's functioning exactly as evolution intended, but it's completely misapplied to a modern corporate environment.
Misapplied how? Why does my brain think a bad slide transition is a life or death situation?
Because our neurological architecture wasn't designed to maximize our professional confidence, It was designed to keep us alive.
Okay, that makes sense.
Think about it. If our ancestors were walking through a forest and saw 20 beautiful fruit trees and one hungry tiger, remembering the fruit trees doesn't keep them alive the next day.
Right, but remembering the tiger definitely does.
Exactly. The brain has this profound negativity bias because threats carry a much higher evolutionary cost than rewards. So when your manager gives you that tiny critique, your amygdala, which is the brain's threat detection center, it basically flags it as a social and professional tiger.
A social tiger. Wow, so it triggers this incredible downward spiral.
Yeah.
And you spend weeks just completely unable to think about anything else.
It consumes you.
It really does. You walk out of other meetings where you actually contributed brilliant ideas, but all you can recall are the moments you paused or stumbled over a word.
Yeah, the filter is completely skewed at that point.
Right. You get emails praising a recent project, and your mind immediately distorts the praise. You start wondering if they're just trying to make you feel better because you're fundamentally incompetent.
It bleeds into absolutely everything.
It does. You stop going to the gym in the morning because the emotional rumination just drains your physical energy. Suddenly, reality itself feels hostile.
Like the whole world is against you.
Exactly. The traffic on your morning commute seems worse. You spill hot coffee all over your favorite shirt. Your colleagues appear distant. You're trapped in this relentless, suffocating loop of frustration.
And the terrifying part is, you have no idea how you built the cage, let alone how to unlock it.
Yes. The feeling of helplessness is so real.
It is very real, but we have to establish a foundational truth right away. What you're experiencing in that downward spiral is not bad luck.
It's not just the universe having it out for you.
No, the universe is not conspiring against you, and it certainly isn't a permanent character flaw. What you are witnessing is a highly predictable mechanical system. It's psychology and environmental feedback.
So it operates on actual law.
Exactly like physics. It's mechanical.
Well, uncovering those invisible mechanics is exactly the mission of our conversation today. We really want to map out why we get trapped in these negative loops, understand the true architecture of motivation, and basically provide a systematic toolkit to fundamentally reshape both your inner landscape and your outer reality.
Because, as the material points out, you are not a passive receiver of your life.
You are the continuous generator of it. Every thought, emotion, and action is actively instructing your environment on how to treat you.
But until you understand the machinery operating behind the scenes, you're always going to feel like a victim of random circumstance.
Right. So let's begin by pulling apart this massive lie we tell ourselves. When we are stuck in that rut-like, when our protagonist is sitting on the couch, obsessing over the critique, skipping the gym, we usually diagnose the problem as a lack of drive.
We do. We blame ourselves for being lazy.
We totally do. We tell ourselves, I will finally take action when I feel more motivated. I just need to wait for my motivation to return.
But according to the research we're exploring today, waiting for motivation is a fundamental trap. We are viewing the entire concept backward.
Backward. How so?
Well, society has sold us this romanticized myth. We're told motivation is the spontaneous wave of positive energy that just washes over you.
Yeah, like lightning striking.
Exactly, and it fills you with inspiration and carries you effortlessly toward your goals. But when we strip away the poetry and look at the raw behavioral science, we find a much colder reality.
Which is what?
Motivation does not arrive before action. Discomfort arrives before action.
Okay, I want to push back on that slightly. Discomfort.
Yeah.
Because people associate motivation with excitement, that hyped up feeling you get after listening to a great speech. You're saying the core driver is actually pain.
Absolutely. Think about the most basic biological drives that keep us functioning. Why do we eat?
Well, to stay alive.
Yeah.
And because food tastes good.
Sure, visual appeal and taste are nice secondary benefits, but we're fundamentally driven to seek food because the gnawing, hollow feeling of hunger in our stomach is extremely uncomfortable.
Right.
We drink water to alleviate the discomfort of a dry throat. Taking action to pursue any goal is essentially a system for managing anticipated pain or discomfort.
So if I'm sitting on my couch, knowing perfectly well that I should go for a 3-mile run, and I tell myself, I'm just not motivated today, my brain isn't lacking a magical spark.
No, your brain is actively calculating the future.
It's anticipating the physical discomfort of my lungs burning, the sweat, the cold wind, the muscle fatigue.
Exactly. Your brain's primary evolutionary directive is to conserve energy and avoid pain, so it just says, let's skip that.
So I'm not lacking drive, I'm just successfully executing an avoidance strategy.
You are a master at avoiding discomfort. And the trick your brain plays on you, the cognitive distortion here, is that it vastly overestimates how long and how intense that discomfort will be.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it projects the initial shock of the cold wind across the entire hour. It completely ignores the fact that your body will warm up and release endorphins after 5 minutes.
So we procrastinate to avoid an exaggerated phantom of discomfort. That is fascinating. To really understand how to bypass this avoidance, the sources provide a brilliant structural model.
The motivation triangle.
Yes, the motivation triangle. If we want to build sustainable drive, we really need to look at its anatomy. So imagine a triangle. One side represents your behavior.
Right, the mechanical steps.
Exactly. These are the things you must execute. Lacing up the running shoes, opening the laptop to write the difficult email, walking up to the podium to speak.
That is the action side. The second side of the triangle is the benefit.
And that's the desired outcome you're chasing.
Precisely. The improved cardiovascular health, the promotion at work, the repaired relationship, whatever you want out of the action.
Now, in a perfect world, that would just be a straight line.
Oh.
I do the behavior, I get the benefit. But as you just explained, that straight line gets severed by the brain's anticipation of discomfort.
The action suddenly looks way too costly.
Right. So we need the bottom of the triangle, the foundational base that connects the behavior to the benefit. And that foundation is belief.
Without belief, the entire structure collapses under the slightest pressure.
How are we defining belief in this context?
It's the absolute, unwavering conviction that the behavior you are engaging in will definitively yield the benefit you desire.
Okay, so if that conviction is missing.
Your brain will not authorize the expenditure of energy. You can have the most scientifically optimized workout routine in the world, and you can desperately desire to be in great physical shape.
Right.
But if, deep in your subconscious, you hold a belief that your genetics are flawed and you will never lose weight, regardless of your effort, you will quit the very moment your lungs start to burn.
Because your brain will just say, why endure this pain? It isn't going to work anyway.
Exactly.
I see this constantly in the corporate world. Leaders give their teams the perfect strategy, the software tools, the financial incentives, but the team completely fails to execute.
Because they don't actually believe the new strategy will change the market reality. The belief foundation is totally missing.
And to fix this missing belief, modern pop psychology and the self-help industry step in with a terribly toxic solution. They tell us to just think positive.
Oh, the mere affirmations.
Yes. They tell you to stand in front of your bathroom mirror, puff out your chest, and shout, I am a champion. I will conquer the day.
It's exhausting.
But the sources we are looking at suggest this forced positivity is not just ineffective, it is actively damaging.
It creates what researchers call the circle of false promise. It's a highly deceptive psychological trap because it actually masquerades as progress.
Let's map out how that works. It usually begins when your mood is low, right?
Right. Our protagonist is feeling humiliated about that presentation. They want an immediate escape from the emotional discomfort, so they turn to a positive fantasy.
They close their eyes and visualize standing on a stage, receiving a standing ovation, or they shout those hollow affirmations in the mirror.
And the really dangerous part is that it actually works for a minute.
Wait, it does?
Yes, because your brain doesn't always distinguish between a vividly imagined success and a real one. So, by screaming, "I am a massive success" in the mirror, your brain releases a quick hit of dopamine.
You get a temporary emotional high, you feel relieved.
But you haven't done any actual work. You just consumed the emotional reward of the achievement without executing the behavior.
Oh, I see. Because your brain already received the chemical payoff, your biological drive to actually go do the difficult, uncomfortable work drops to zero.
Exactly. Why hunt the mammoth if you already feel full?
Wow. So this reduction in drive leads to minimal action. And minimal action inevitably leads to poor real-world outcomes.
Which then drag you right back down into disappointment, worsening your initial mood.
And when you crash, the self-help guru tells you, oh, your affirmations didn't work. Your vibrations must have been too low. You didn't believe it hard enough. Get back in front of the mirror and shout louder.
It is a literal hamster wheel of self-improvement. It generates the feeling of momentum while keeping you entirely stationary.
The illusion of forced positivity, it completely bypasses the hard work of actual belief building and goes straight for the unearned dopamine hit. Okay, I want to pause and really test this idea.
Yeah.
Because if forced positivity is a trap and waiting for motivation is a trap, it feels like we are stuck in a room with the doors locked.
It can feel that way, yes.
Think about it like building a house in a storm. Waiting for motivation feels like waiting for the rain to stop before you build a roof.
Right.
But you build a roof precisely because it is raining.
Right.
The discomfort of the cold rain is what forces the action. Are the sources suggesting we just have to live out in the rain, suffer the discomfort, and force ourselves through the pain purely on willpower?
Not at all, because willpower is a finite resource. It depletes very quickly. The rain forces the action, yes, but you still need the fundamental belief that the roof you are building will actually keep the water out.
So we can't just grit our teeth forever.
No. What we need to do is stop trying to hack our brains with cheap affirmations and instead look at the true mechanics of how reality operates.
How does the environment around us respond to our internal emotional baseline?
Which brings us back to the downward spiral of our protagonist.
Right. Why did the spilled coffee, the terrible traffic, and the dismissive colleagues all follow that one piece of critical feedback? Why do bad days seem to aggressively snowball?
The sources point to two invisible mechanics of reality. Two foundational forces that govern how our external environment interacts with our internal state.
And the first mechanic is magnify.
Yes. The concept of magnify suggests that your external reality acts as a giant amplifier for your dominant emotional state.
Notice you didn't say your thoughts.
Very intentionally. Thoughts are fleeting. They're just surface-level chatter. Emotion is the true currency of your psychological frequency.
Emotion is energy in motion.
Exactly. It carries real physiological weight. It alters your heart rate, your posture, your micro-expressions.
So if I walk into an office feeling deeply insecure and stressed because of a bad presentation,
your entire biological and psychological system is broadcasting that stress. And the environment will use events, conditions, and seemingly random interactions to magnify that feeling.
how does the environment even know to do that?
The mechanism at play here involves your brain's reticular activating system, or the RAS.
Oh, the RAS.
The RAS acts as a filter between your conscious mind and the millions of data points your senses are bombarded with every single second.
So it's like a bouncer for your brain.
A very strict bouncer. If your dominant emotion is stress, your RAS is programmed to scan the environment for evidence that justifies the stress.
Oh, so it's looking for a reason to prove me right.
Exactly. It will literally filter out the person smiling at you in the hallway, but it will hyper-focus on the colleague who casually checks their watch while you are speaking.
Making you perceive the world as more hostile.
Which in turn makes you act more defensive, which causes people to actually treat you worse.
It's a terrifying self-fulfilling prophecy orchestrated by our own sensory filters. If I feel invisible, if I feel like I do not matter, my body language shrinks, my voice drops.
And the world responds by literally walking right past you without noticing.
The environment simply takes whatever emotional frequency I am emitting and just turns up the volume.
That's it, exactly. The environment does not have a moral compass. It does not judge whether your emotion is helpful or harmful to you. It simply acts as an acoustic chamber, echoing and amplifying the signal it receives.
Which perfectly explains why the bad day gets worse. And that leads to the second invisible mechanic, maintain.
Yes, maintain.
The sources explain that our environment and our own psychology functions as a system. And systems are, by their very nature, lazy.
They crave energetic equilibrium. They completely despise sudden changes because change requires a massive expenditure of energy.
So once a specific emotional state like the frustration from that one piece of criticism is magnified by the environment, the system locks it in.
It wants to maintain that cycle. It is far more energy efficient for your brain to keep running the same negative neurological pathway than to halt the momentum and forge a brand new positive one.
The system actively feeds on that emotional momentum to sustain the loop.
Yes.
If we look at this through a mechanical lens, it is exactly like a smart home thermostat.
I love this analogy.
It's so good. Imagine you come home from work, completely furious, and you angrily smack the digital dial up to 90 degrees.
Just a total overreaction.
Exactly. The whole house goes into overdrive to match your command. The furnace roars to life, the vents start blasting hot air. The system is actively magnifying that heat.
That's the magnify mechanic.
Right. But then the system locks in. It is programmed to maintain that 90 degrees. Even if you sit on the couch an hour later sweating and realize, this is incredibly uncomfortable, I want it to be cooler, the house is now actively fighting your comfort.
Because it's trying to maintain the equilibrium you set.
Yes. If you open a window to let in a breeze, the furnace just burns hotter to compensate. So the big question is, how do we reprogram the thermostat if the entire architecture of the house is fighting our attempts to cool it down?
It's an excellent question because it highlights exactly why logic fails in these scenarios.
The logic fails.
Completely. You cannot break that locked-in loop by standing in the hallway and rationally explaining to the thermostat why 72 degrees is a more sensible temperature.
Well, yeah, it's a machine.
But your mind is doing the same thing. The system didn't lock into 90 degrees because of a logical spreadsheet. It locked in because of the intense, emotional, physical strike you gave the dial. Your subconscious mind, which controls that internal thermostat, does not speak the language of logic. It only truly understands the language of emotion and repetition.
So we have to completely bypass the rational brain and go straight into the programming language of the subconscious.
We do, and the sources use a great metaphor for this, the metaphor of fertile soil.
Right. Think of your subconscious mind as the most aggressively fertile soil on the planet.
The soil does not care what you plant. It has absolutely no preference.
You can plant the seeds of a magnificent oak tree, or you can plant the seeds of a highly toxic weed.
And the soil will faithfully, mechanically grow whatever it is given. It accepts what it is repeatedly told, especially when those instructions are delivered with a strong emotional charge.
So if our protagonist keeps internally repeating, I am a terrible public speaker, my career is stalling, and they feel the burning heat of shame in their chest while they think it.
The subconscious soil just says, understood. Let's allocate all our resources to growing a massive, deeply rooted tree of public speaking anxiety.
And because that soil is so efficient, you cannot just rationally decide to erase that bad programming. You can't just ignore the tree. It is already growing.
Exactly. You cannot erase it. You must displace it.
Displace it. Okay.
We are talking about neuroplasticity here. Imagine your negative thought pattern as a river that has carved a really deep canyon in your mind over many years.
Okay, a deep river.
You cannot just stand at the edge of the canyon and politely ask the water to stop flowing. The water will always follow the path of least resistance.
So how do you stop it?
To change the flow, you have to do the heavy, arduous work of digging a brand new trench. You have to generate an emotional charge toward a new, desired reality that is so powerful, so consistent, that it fundamentally diverts the water and displaces the old limiting belief.
But wait, how do we dig that new trench without falling right back into the toxic positivity trap we discussed earlier?
Good point.
How do we build genuine belief without just shouting empty affirmations in the mirror?
The distinction lies entirely in your relationship to the outcome. When people use toxic positivity, they are usually in a state of desperation.
Oh, like they're panicking.
Exactly.
Huh.
They are shouting affirmations because they are terrified of failing. The trick to genuinely reprogramming the subconscious is to experience the desired reality internally so intensely and so frequently that you actually feel nothing for it externally.
Wait, I need you to break that down. you feel nothing for it.
Nothing.
That goes against everything we were taught. If I want a major promotion, shouldn't I be incredibly hyped and passionate about achieving it?
If you are desperately hyped, if your heart races with anxiety at the thought of not getting it, you have placed that goal on a pedestal.
Okay.
And when you put a goal on a pedestal, you are signaling to your subconscious that the goal is separate from you. It is above you. It is something you currently lack.
And remember the magnify mechanic.
Exactly. The universe magnifies your dominant emotion. If your dominant emotion is the lack of the goal, the environment will amplify that state of lacking.
Oh, that is fascinating. Desperation literally acts as a repellent. By obsessing over how much I need it, I'm broadcasting my own deficiency.
You are. So you must depedestalize the goal.
Depedestalize.
Yeah.
Make it normal.
Yes. You must visualize and emotionally connect with your desired outcome, whether that is being a confident speaker or running a successful business, until it feels completely ordinary.
You have to make it feel as normal as putting on an old, comfortable pair of shoes.
That's it. When you slide your foot into a broken-in pair of shoes, you don't jump up and down screaming, "Look at me, I have shoes!"
Right, you'd look insane. You just put them on and walk out the door.
Exactly. When your desired reality feels that normal to your nervous system, you no longer need the outside world to validate it. And the precise moment you stop desperately needing external validation, the negative loop shatters, and the new reality can manifest through your actions.
It's a massive shift. It's moving from desperately grasping at a future state to quietly embodying it right now.
And the material outlines a practical framework for digging this new trench, step by step.
It's an acronym called the Confidence LOOP.
It is a sequential process for shifting the subconscious. Let's look at the first letter, L.
L stands for let go of doubt.
But we must be very careful with the mechanics of this. Letting go does not mean wrestling with your doubt. It does not mean aggressively arguing with your inner critic.
Because if you fight the doubt, you're giving it energy.
Exactly. You are validating its presence. Letting go means simply noticing the anxious thought arising and consciously choosing not to engage with it. You just drop it. You create a mental vacuum.
But nature abhors a vacuum. If I drop the negative thought, my mind is going to want to fill that empty space immediately. What goes in next?
That is the first O, open to belief. Notice the phrasing there.
It's not demand belief.
Right, or force belief. You do not have to leap from "I am a total failure" all the way to "I am the greatest professional in my industry."
Because that leap is impossible for the brain to accept. That just triggers the false promise trap again.
Exactly. You just have to allow a tiny whisper of possibility. You introduce the thought, maybe it is possible for me to improve. Maybe I can handle the next presentation slightly better.
A microscopic crack of openness.
And that crack is the birthplace of genuine confidence.
A whisper, not a roar. That lowers the barrier to entry significantly. So once I'm open to that possibility, we move to the second O.
Own belief. This is the internalization phase. You begin to align your daily identity with that whisper of possibility. You start viewing yourself not as an imposter, but as a person who is actively in the process of building competence.
And finally, the P.
Plant belief.
Yeah.
This is the crucial mechanism that makes everything else work.
You plant the belief by taking physical action.
Yes. Action is the ultimate undeniable proof to your subconscious that the belief is real. You can do all the mental visualization you want, but until you take a physical step in the real world, the subconscious soil remains completely unturned.
Let's ground this in a real-world example, because the way belief alters physical behavior is almost unbelievable until you look at the biology.
It really is.
The sources discuss the placebo effect, but not in the standard medical context of sugar pills. They look at the placebo effect in elite human performance.
It is one of the most compelling studies of the motivation triangle in action. The sources detail a scenario involving a world-class professional tennis player.
Right. She was dominating from the baseline, but she was struggling severely with her performance at the net.
She lacked confidence, she hesitated, and she was losing points whenever she moved forward.
So her coach analyzed her biomechanics and realized her physical skills at the net were actually flawless. Her muscles knew exactly what to do.
The bottleneck was entirely her belief.
So the coach deployed a radical intervention. He didn't give her more mechanical drills. He used a strategy of deliberate deception.
He presented her with highly official-looking, completely fabricated statistics.
He literally showed her fake data, claiming that she was actually winning a massive percentage of her points when she approached the net. Far more than she consciously realized.
He fed her fake data to fundamentally alter her subconscious programming. And because she trusted the coach and the authority of the data, her belief shifted instantaneously.
She let go of her doubt, open to the belief that she was actually a lethal player at the net, and she owned it.
But we have to look really closely at the mechanism here. The changed belief did not employ telekinesis. It didn't magically guide the tennis ball over the net.
Right, it's not magic.
The shifted belief altered her neurochemistry, which then altered her physical behavior.
Because she suddenly believed she was destined to succeed at the net, her brain stopped anticipating the pain of failure.
Exactly. Her cortisol levels dropped, releasing the tension in her shoulders. Her dopamine levels optimized, sharpening her focus.
She approached the net more frequently, her posture was more aggressive, her reaction time decreased because she wasn't hesitating anymore.
Precisely. Her physical execution underwent a dramatic transformation simply because the biological brakes of doubt had been removed.
And she started winning 80% of her net points, and she went on to win the entire tournament.
The belief was the bridge that authorized the action. The placebo effect is not magic. It is the physiological cascading of confidence, unlocking the mechanical behavior required to achieve the benefit.
That is just profound. So we understand how to stop the downward spiral. We know how to reprogram the thermostat using the confidence LOP, and we see how shifting our belief unlocks physical action.
We have the foundation.
But stopping a negative cycle is really just getting us back to a neutral baseline. If someone is trying to build a decades-long career, write a novel, or lead a massive organization, a temporary burst of optimized neurochemistry isn't enough.
No, it's not sustainable.
Right, because motivation, as we defined it, is a survival mechanism. It is exhausting. How do we transition from just surviving the friction to actively generating unstoppable long-term momentum?
We must move from the spark to the fire. We have to introduce the concept of the inner flame.
The inner flame.
Yes. Motivation, as we have established, pushes you away from pain. It is biological, driven by dopamine spikes, and focused on immediate survival.
It is the adrenaline that gets you out of the building when the fire alarm rings.
Exactly. It is highly effective in the short term, but you cannot live your entire life in a state of adrenaline-fueled panic. Eventually, your adrenal glands will fatigue and you will burn out completely.
The push of motivation has to mature into something else.
It must mature into inspiration.
Inspiration.
To inspire literally means to breathe in. While motivation pushes you from behind with a stick, inspiration pulls you forward toward a vision.
Ooh, I like that distinction. Push versus pull.
Inspiration is tethered to your deep identity, to profound meaning, and to a long-term vision that extends far beyond your immediate comfort. If motivation is the initial spark that ignites the engine, inspiration is the deep, oxygen-rich environment that allows the fire to burn indefinitely.
As the psychological maxim goes, inspiration eats motivation for breakfast.
Every single time.
So how do we locate that pull? Because find your passion is the most exhausted cliche in career advice. And it often leads people astray because passions fade as soon as the work gets tedious.
Passion is fickle.
Exactly. How do we find a more durable source of inspiration?
It requires achieving a profound state of internal alignment. There is a powerful conceptual framework originating from Japan that acts as a diagnostic compass for this exact alignment.
And it is found at the intersection of 4 specific domains of your life, right?
Yes. Let's map out these 4 circles.
Okay, the first circle is what you love. These are the activities that naturally engage you, where you experience flow state and completely lose track of time.
Right. The second circle is what you are good at. This includes your innate talents, but more importantly, the hard skills you have rigorously cultivated over time.
The third circle is what the world needs. This is where your focus shifts outward. Where can you solve a genuine problem or contribute meaningful value to others?
And the fourth circle is what you can be rewarded for. The economic reality that your efforts must generate enough value to sustain your livelihood and fund your continued work.
The genius of this framework is the overlap.
Explain what you mean.
Well, if you only have what you love and what you are good at, you have a fulfilling hobby, but you might be starving because nobody's paying you for it.
Right.
If you have what you are good at and what you are paid for, you have a comfortable profession, but you might feel an agonizing sense of emptiness because you don't love it or feel it helps the world.
It's only when you hit the dead center of all 4 circles that effort stops feeling like a transactional grind.
When you hit the center, you transition from a transaction to a transformation. You stop chasing external dopamine hits to get through the day, and you start being pulled relentlessly by internal meaning.
The sources expand on this exact kind of alignment with a very practical model to diagnose the health of our inner flame. They use the acronym FIRE.
Let's break down fire. It represents 4 distinct fuel sources that create this unstoppable internal momentum.
Let's examine the components. The F stands for freedom.
Freedom.
Freedom, in this context, is the psychological autonomy to choose your own path. It is the mental ownership of your circumstances.
So it's not just doing whatever you want.
No, it is the profound cognitive shift from saying, I have to do this, to I choose to do this. Even in difficult circumstances, recognizing your agency is a massive source of energy.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
The I is integrity.
Yeah.
And I want to spend a moment here because people treat integrity as a moral buzzword, but neurologically, a lack of integrity is exhausting.
It's completely draining.
Integrity simply means aligning your daily granular actions with your deepest core values. When you behave in a way that contradicts your values, when you lie to a client or cut a corner or fail to speak up for a colleague, you experience an integrity breach.
And the psychological cost of that breach is cognitive dissonance.
Yes. Your brain has to spend massive amounts of energy trying to rationalize the conflicting behavior. It is like driving a car with the parking brake engaged.
But when your actions align perfectly with your values, that friction vanishes, and you move with incredible unburdened conviction.
Moving to the R, we have responsibility.
This is the act of taking absolute ownership of the outcomes in your life. It is the deliberate rejection of the victim mentality.
It's looking at a failure and saying, regardless of external factors, my response to this is entirely up to me.
Responsibility is often viewed as a heavy burden. But in the architecture of high performance, it is the ultimate source of power. If you are responsible for the failure, you are also empowered to engineer the success.
And finally, the E stands for external influence. This encompasses the tangible rewards, financial compensation, career advancement, public recognition, legacy.
But there is a massive warning label attached to this element.
What's the caveat?
External influences are highly motivating and completely valid, but they must strictly follow internal alignment, never replace it. If you build your entire career chasing financial rewards or public validation without the foundation of freedom, integrity, and responsibility, you are building a skyscraper on a swamp.
It's going to sink.
Eventually, the external rewards will fail to mask the internal emptiness, and the entire structure will collapse into burnout. The money and the recognition must be the byproduct of living out your internal fire, not the fire itself.
I want you, the listener, to run an audit on your own life right now. Look at your career, your relationships, your daily routines. Which of these 4 flames is flickering the lowest?
It's a great exercise.
Are you suffocating from a lack of freedom because you feel trapped by obligations? Are you lacking energy because your daily actions are out of alignment with your integrity?
Are you bleeding power by avoiding responsibility and blaming your circumstances?
Or have you prioritized external rewards over internal meaning? Motivation is like a cheap sugar rush from a candy bar. You get a quick spike of energy to answer a few emails, and an hour later you are crashing, staring blankly at your screen.
But this fire model, this deep inspiration, is like placing a massive, dense oak log into a fireplace.
Yes, it takes much longer to catch fire. It requires patience to ignite. But once it burns, it radiates enough heat to keep the entire house warm through the longest, darkest winter.
That is the exact functional difference between the two. However, having that massive oak log burning brightly in your living room is wonderful, but it is ultimately useless if you never leave the house.
Right, you can be perfectly aligned, deeply inspired, and sitting completely still on your couch.
Vision without execution is just a hallucination. The internal flame is merely potential energy.
So how do we translate this profound internal alignment into kinetic energy? How do we build tangible, real-world mastery?
This transition brings us to the architecture of action. The bridge between the internal psychological state and external mastery is constructed from a very specific attitude: the refusal to lose.
The refusal to lose.
It is the raw, unglamorous power of persistence.
Now, I need to stop you here, because the sources make a highly counterintuitive argument about persistence.
They do.
The standard narrative is that you must first build up your unshakable faith, you must conquer your imposter syndrome, and then, fully armed with confidence, you step into the arena and persist through the challenges. The belief precedes the persistence.
And the behavioral research flips that narrative completely upside down. Persistence induces faith, not the other way around.
Walk us through the mechanics of that, because that shatters the way most people approach their goals.
Think about it. If you sit on the sidelines waiting to feel a profound, bulletproof sense of confidence before you attempt difficult work, you will be waiting until the day you die.
He'll never start.
The brain requires evidence to form a belief. Action is the mechanism that generates the evidence. You do not wait to feel strong. You take the action while your hands are shaking. You persist through the initial clumsiness, the failure, and the embarrassment.
So the action creates the data.
Exactly. The very act of surviving that friction and continuing to move forward sends a powerful data point to your subconscious. The brain says, we survived that. We are still moving. We must be capable.
The strength and the faith are the result of the action, not the prerequisite for it.
You literally drag your future into existence through sheer mechanical output, and the belief catches up later.
The sources provide a framework for structuring this persistent output, IVVM.
It is an operational sequence for materializing reality. Idealize, visualize, verbalize, materialize.
Let's quickly hit those. First, you idealize the ultimate standard. You define the absolute highest version of the outcome.
Then you visualize it, you run the mental simulations, embedding the emotional reality into the subconscious, as we discussed earlier.
Third, you verbalize it. You speak the boundaries and the expectations into existence, communicating the standard to your environment.
And finally, the heaviest step. Materialize. This is the relentless daily persistence required to forge the vision into physical reality.
But let's be very clear about what that materialization looks like. We are not talking about mindless grinding. We are talking about the performance edge.
Deliberate practice.
Exactly. There is a toxic myth in our culture about the prodigy. We look at a world-class violinist, an Olympic athlete, or a visionary CEO, and we soothe our own egos by assuming they were simply blessed by the genetic lottery.
We assume greatness is an accident of birth.
But when researchers actually look under the hood of top performers, they find that greatness is almost entirely constructed through deep, deliberate practice.
Deliberate practice is fundamentally different from regular practice.
How so?
You can type on a computer keyboard every single day for 30 years, sending emails and writing memos, and you will not become a world-class novelist. Repetition alone does not breed mastery. It only breeds automation of your current baseline.
Because typing emails is repetition entirely within your comfort zone. Let's look at it neurologically. If I go to the gym and pick up a 5-pound weight, I can curl that weight 10,000 times. It is repetition.
But your bicep will never grow.
Right. The biological trigger for muscle hypertrophy requires lifting a weight that forces the muscle fibers to fail. Deliberate practice is the cognitive equivalent of lifting heavy weights.
It requires operating at the absolute razor's edge of your current ability. It means stretching yourself just millimeters beyond what you can comfortably execute.
It requires attempting the difficult chord progression, failing miserably, receiving brutal and honest feedback, isolating the exact micro-movement that caused the failure, adjusting your grip, and trying again.
That edge of failure is where the biological magic happens. When you engage in that specific type of deliberate, agonizing practice, when you focus with intense concentration and fire a very specific mental or physical circuit repeatedly to correct an error, your brain responds physically.
It deploys cells to wrap that specific neural pathway in a fatty substance called myelin.
Yes, myelin acts exactly like the rubber insulation on an electrical wire. The thicker the insulation, the less signal is lost, and the faster the electricity travels.
So the thicker the myelin sheath around a neural circuit, the faster and more effortlessly the electrical signal travels down the nerve.
This is the anatomical reality of how a complex skill becomes automatic. Think of a legendary professional golfer.
Right, standing over a putt.
When they face a critical putt, they do not have to consciously think about the angle of their wrist, the weight distribution in their feet, or the pendulum swing of their shoulders.
Because over decades of deliberate practice at the edge of their ability, they have built such massive layers of myelin around that specific sequence of neural firing that the physical action executes with flawless precision.
It completely bypasses conscious thought.
We hear the phrase, practice makes perfect. So often, it has lost all meaning. Based on the neurology of myelin, a far more accurate phrase would be, comfort kills progress.
Comfort absolutely kills progress.
If your practice sessions are comfortable, if you are not frustrated, if you are not failing, you are not signaling the brain to produce myelin. The psychological frustration you feel when you can't quite master a skill is the cognitive equivalent of your muscles shaking under a heavy weight.
The shaking is not a sign to stop. The shaking is the exact friction required for growth.
The shaking is where the mastery is synthesized, but we must address the final, most volatile variable.
The crucible.
Yes, Because all this preparation, the confidence LO, the alignment, the myelination from deliberate practice, all of this is established in a controlled environment.
It is built in the quiet gym, the private studio, the calm office.
Right. It is the old military adage.
Yeah.
Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Mm.
What happens when the controlled environment shatters? What happens when the stakes are terrifying, the market crashes, the crowd is screaming, or your massive presentation goes completely off the rails?
That is the ultimate test. The ability to execute your myelinated skills when the environment is hostile requires the final architectural pillar, ice-cool composure.
And to navigate that chaos, the sources outline the CPR framework. Let's dissect CPR. The C stands for calmness.
But we need to define that carefully because people often confuse calmness with lethargy or apathy.
Calmness in the face of chaos is not a passive state.
Right. Not at all. It is an intensely active state of internal regulation. It is the ability to actively manage your autonomic nervous system, regulating your breathing and your heart rate so that your prefrontal cortex, the logical, strategic part of your brain, does not get shut down by the amygdala's panic response.
It is finding the eye of the hurricane while the storm rages around you.
Beautifully said. The P stands for philosophy.
Now, how does a philosophical worldview keep a professional from panicking during a crisis?
Your philosophy is your internal operating code. It is the bedrock of your professional and personal identity. When the external world descends into chaos, the human brain desperately looks for an anchor.
And if you don't have one?
If you do not have an internal philosophy, you will anchor to the external chaos and you will drown in it. But if you have spent time articulating a core philosophy, for example, if your internal code is obstacles are simply raw data for my next attempt, then a sudden failure does not emotionally crush you.
It just triggers a pre-programmed analytical response.
Exactly. Your philosophy acts as a noise-canceling filter against the panic.
That makes perfect sense. The philosophy dictates the interpretation of the event. But the final letter, R, stands for repetition. And I have to pause here.
Why is that?
We just spent 20 minutes discussing how repetition and deliberate practice build physical skills and myelin. But how does repeating a physical skill create emotional calmness?
Because of perhaps the most profound, sobering truth about human performance under extreme stress. When the pressure spikes, when the adrenaline floods your system, you do not rise to the occasion.
What happens?
You fall to the level of your systems.
You fall to the level of your systems. That is a chilling reality check.
It is biological fact. When survival hormones flood the brain, conscious, complex thought is temporarily paralyzed. You revert to whatever behaviors are most deeply myelinated, to whatever is entirely automatic.
So if you have not automated your composure,
If you have not rigorously practiced your breathing protocols, your mental distancing techniques, and your physical resets during low-stakes training, you'll default to your biological baseline, which is panic.
repetition is what builds the mental rituals that make calmness your default automated response, even when your heart is pounding at 150 beats per minute.
This requires a deep understanding of how pressure actually impacts human output. The sources point to the inverted U theory, which maps arousal against performance.
Imagine a bell curve graph. On the far left side, you have an environment with virtually zero pressure. The stakes are zero. What happens to performance?
It is dismal. In the absence of pressure, the brain does not allocate resources. Too little pressure breeds apathy, boredom, and a complete lack of focus.
You make careless errors because your neurological system is essentially asleep. You need heat to generate movement.
So as the pressure increases, moving up the left side of the curve, performance improves. You become hyper-alert, your focus narrows, your reaction times drop.
But there is a tipping point. If the pressure continues to compound, you cross the peak of the curve and start sliding down the right side.
That downward slide is where cognitive overload occurs. The pressure becomes so intense that the amygdala hijacks the system. Anxiety spikes, muscles tense up, choking occurs, and performance collapses entirely.
So the objective is never to eliminate pressure.
No, the objective is to skillfully ride the wave of pressure right to the peak of that inverted U. That peak is the optimal sweet spot. It is the precise intersection of high challenge and high skill, commonly known as flow state.
And maintaining your balance on that microscopic peak requires masterful emotional regulation. But the sources clarify a massive misconception here. The prevailing advice in corporate culture is that high performers must be stoic robots. They must aggressively suppress their emotions, push down their fear, and ignore their stress.
Suppressing emotion is a catastrophic strategy.
Why?
Emotional energy is subject to the laws of thermodynamics. It cannot be destroyed. It can only be transferred or stored. If you try to hold a massive inflated beach ball underwater, it requires constant, exhausting effort.
And eventually, your arms will fatigue, and that beach ball will explode to the surface with chaotic, destructive force.
High performers do not suppress their emotions. They observe them. They notice the cold spike of fear, they recognize the heat of anger, but they refuse to identify with those emotions. They maintain a clinical distance.
They understand that radical acceptance of the emotion is the key to emotional freedom.
They watch the emotion drift across their internal sky like a dark cloud, but they recognize that they are the sky, not the weather.
And they use highly tactical tools to maintain that distance in real time. The sources offer a brilliant, anonymized case study of a professional whose job required dealing with incredibly hostile, angry individuals all day long.
A really high-stress environment.
Very. To prevent himself from absorbing that toxic emotional radiation and taking it home with him, he engineered a physical anchor. During a hostile interaction, he would quietly reach down and tap his plastic ID badge.
A simple, almost invisible physical movement. But the power was in the psychological meaning he had attached to it.
He had rigorously trained his mind to associate tapping that badge with a state of mental distancing.
The physical tap was a neurological circuit breaker. It instantly reminded him that the person screaming at him was angry at the uniform, at the institution, at the situation, but not at him personally.
The badge acted as a psychological blast shield, dissolving the negative energy before it could penetrate his emotional baseline.
By utilizing a physical anchor, he bypassed the spiraling thoughts and instantly regulated his internal state, allowing him to respond with professional composure rather than defensive anger.
It functions as an automated reset button. When you synthesize this entire framework of composure, it creates a breathtaking dichotomy. Fire in the belly, ice in the head.
I love that phrase.
You possess the burning, unstoppable inspiration of the inner flame pulling you forward, but your cognitive machinery remains cool, analytical, and entirely detached from the chaos of the moment.
That equilibrium is the absolute pinnacle of human potential.
Which brings our journey completely full circle. Let us return to the glass-walled boardroom. Let's look again at our protagonist.
You,
The listener, who delivered the brilliant presentation, but allowed a single critique to drag you into a suffocating downward spiral.
when we view that protagonist's experience through the comprehensive mechanical lens we have constructed today, the entire landscape changes.
We realize that the terrible day, the spilled coffee, the self-doubt, none of it was a life sentence. It was not a permanent diagnosis of incompetence.
It was simply a fleeting moment of anticipated discomfort that triggered a lack of belief.
That lack of belief generated an emotion of shame, and the environment simply functioned as a mirror, mechanically magnifying that shame and locking it into a loop.
But once you understand the machinery, you take control of the levers.
By recognizing the trap of waiting for motivation, by leveraging the confidence LOP to intentionally dig new trenches in the subconscious soil, by discovering the deep alignment to fuel your journey, and by insisting on the friction of deliberate practice and the armor of ice-cool composure.
That protagonist no longer just survives the critical feedback.
They weaponize it. They use the manager's critique as the exact point of friction required to build thicker myelin. They completely rewrite their trajectory. They cease being a passive victim of their environment and assume their rightful position as the architect of their reality.
Because the ultimate truth woven through all of this material is that human potential is not a fixed genetic trait. It is not an allocation of luck. Potential is simply the physical and psychological gap between where you currently stand and where you desire to be.
And you have just been handed the mechanical toolkit to close that gap. You are the continuous active generator of your reality.
Which leaves us with one final lingering question.
Something for you to deeply consider as you step away from this conversation and back into the friction of your daily life. If your current reality is simply a magnified, mechanical reflection of your past emotional states, what future reality are you silently, secretly commanding into existence right this very second?
That is the single question that changes everything.
Thank you for joining us for this exploration today. We challenge you to take these invisible mechanics out into the real world, test them under pressure, and start actively generating the reality you actually want. Until next time.